Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching NDTV. As the country voted in the second phase of the 2024 Lok Sabha election, the Supreme Court has given electronic voting machines or EVMs a big vote of confidence. In fact, a two-judge bench rejected petitions seeking 100% verification of votes cast on EVMs using the VVPAT. In fact, Justice Dipankar Datta and Justice Sanjiv Khanna said in the order, while also rejecting a plea to return to paper ballots. The judgment, in fact, said that it would be a setback to electoral reforms. Justice Khanna also said that blindly distrusting a system can lead to unwarranted suspicions. Are EVMs doubters fighting a battle that's unnecessary, dangerous, and can undo years of electoral reforms? That's the question we seek to ask tonight. But first, this report on what exactly is this matter and what did the court say today?
No 100% verification of VVPAT slips. The Supreme Court has ruled, dismissing the plea in two separate but concurring judgments. The two-judge bench also rejected petitions asking for a return to ballot paper voting.
आज उच्च न्यायालय ने सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने साफ-साफ कह दिया है.
Within hours of the verdict, the Prime Minister used it to attack the opposition at a rally in Araria in Bihar.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने अभी 1-2 घंटे पहले ही मतपेटियों को लूटने का इरादा रखने वालों को ऐसा गहरा झटका दिया है, ऐसा गहरा झटका दिया है कि उनके सारे सपने चूर-चूर हो गए हैं. आज उच्च न्यायालय ने सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने साफ-साफ कह दिया है कि बैलेट पेपर वाला पुराना दौर वापस लौट करके नहीं आएगा.
Petitioners had argued for a complete VVPAT count to ensure transparency and prevent potential tampering with the EVMs.
ये ईवीएम जो हैं इनमें एक प्रोग्रामेबल मेमोरी होती है क्योंकि सिंबल लोडिंग करी जाती है और इसलिए इनको मैनिपुलेट किया जा सकता है अगर आप कोई उसमें मैलिशियस प्रोग्राम डाल दें. और इस वजह से ये ज़रूरी है कि जो वीवीपैट है उसका पूरा पेपर ट्रेल का ऑडिट होना चाहिए. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये सारी हमारी मांगें को ठुकरा दिया है.
The Supreme Court said sealed containers containing the VVPAT slips should be sealed and stored for a period of at least 45 days after the declaration of the results. Candidates in second and third place can ask for full verification within 7 days of declaration of results. A team of engineers will then check the EVM microchip.
ईवीएम के ऊपर में जितनी चुनौतियां हुई हैं उनको देख चुकी हैं.
The Election Commission of India had maintained that EVMs are secure and verification is done on a random sampling basis at 5 polling booths per assembly segment.
EVMs are 100% safe, 100% sure. We know now.
The verdict is likely to be debated.
अब सुप्रीम कोर्ट के आदेश का हम लोग सब पालन करेंगे, लेकिन होना चाहिए 100% वीवीपैट की गिनती होनी चाहिए.
अंततः वो देश के खिलाफ ये इंडी गठबंधन के लोग खड़े रहते हैं. आज वो उनकी पोल खुली है और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जो फैसला दिया है वो बहुत शानदार फैसला दिया है.
While some may see it as a missed opportunity to enhance transparency, others may agree with court's concerns about disrupting the election process. The Election Commission of India has also been directed by the Supreme Court to explore ways to further strengthen the verification process. This is Aishwarya Jain with video journalist Xavier Thomas for NDTV in Delhi.
Supreme Court advocate Mahesh Jethmalani, who is also with the BJP, spoke to NDTV's Nikunj Garg on the significance of this judgment. Let's listen into the conversation.
I am joined by one of the most prominent lawyers of this country, Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani. Mr. Jethmalani, welcome to NDTV.
Thank you.
Mr. Jethmalani, would you agree with my summary of the judgment of the Supreme Court that this probably is the landmark judgment as far as the sanctity of the poll process in this country is concerned?
Yes, certainly you've got a judicial seal of approval on the sanctity and integrity of the EVM system of conducting elections. But, this is a repetition of the past. It had already happened before. As you know, Nikunj, it was in 2019, a constitutional court had already been through this, right? And they had given it their endorsement. So, but these are all motivated litigations. As the Supreme Court this time pointed out, it was based only on suspicion. There were no hard facts to invoke the jurisdiction of the court. They said this could be done, this can happen, and so on and so forth. So, whatever residual doubts based on no factual, the EC made it very clear that our system is foolproof. But the Supreme Court still added one or two more things to strengthen the integrity of the EVM. But frankly speaking, it's a motivated petition. It is really done by a bunch of people who are not so much concerned about strengthening our electoral process, but casting a doubt on the sanctity of our democratic processes. It doesn't behove them to do that. In my view, this is an extremely anti-national step to keep casting doubt on the integrity of the process, because you undermine a legitimacy of the government you don't agree with. You're a bad loser. Why you're raking up this pre-election result doubt, right, is in fact because you are a bad loser and you don't want the winner to really, enjoy the fruits of his success and hard work, both in governance and during the electoral process.
Well, Mr. Jethmalani, I was coming to that, but some would actually say that more than casting an aspersion on the government of the day, you are besmirching not only a constitutional body like the Election Commission of India, but also besmirching the entire electoral process in front of the entire global committee of nations. But be that as it may, Supreme Court actually had reserved some very stern words today for the petitioners, and it actually said that these are motivated allegations, and you have actually nothing to show for what you are claiming.
Absolutely no point. The petition is a bare petition. As I've said, it was, it's just speculative and full of conjectures. Right? So, unfortunately, because the issue is serious, the Supreme Court spent some time on it, right, and sealed it once and for all. So it's good that it's got yet another endorsement of being a sacrosanct system which can't be tampered with. The mob, I call them a mob, that moves these petitions, right? They're questionable. Their intent is always questionable, and they're really they're badly motivated, rabble rousers. That's all. They just throw mud on anything. There is no sense of responsibility in the actions they take, particularly in a really sober institution like the Supreme Court. It's just raising unnecessary doubt, and you make the world watch. You then go and give press conferences. It's self-publicity, right? And B, it's at the cost of the nation's institutions.
Well, absolutely. Actually most neutral observers would agree with that, Mr. Jethmalani. But the fact remains this also, that today probably it has been overtaken by certain other people. But it all started by Mr. Subramaniam Swamy. Mr. Subramaniam Swamy went after a certain loss and then cast doubt and actually wanted to return to the ballot paper. And today Supreme Court has said that, look, there is absolutely no return to the ballot paper. We are introducing two more safeguards, so to say. So do you think that these safeguards are effective safeguards and now finally seal the deal, as if one were to put it like that, in the favor of EVM and electronic voting?
Yeah, I think this should be the final word, right? They've sealed any possible, doubts. They're only doubts, right? They've sealed any. Now the EC said you don't even need this, but there's nothing wrong with these extra precautions that the Supreme Court has. It will now show that the Supreme Court has not only examined it yet another time, but examined it to the point of such care, right, that they don't want any future, reopening of the issue.
And it was also good that it was a completely judgment in cohesion. It was a concurrent judgment. Both the judges completely agreed with the fact. So people would say that whatsoever doubts that were being cast on the entire sanctity of the process of the voting in this country, which is probably the largest such exercise undertaken anywhere in the globe, have been now put to rest. But Mr. Jethmalani, do you think that this additional safeguards that have been brought in will now ensure that at least this kind of frivolous petitions are kept out of the legal and judicial process? Or if at all they are raised again, they are summarily dismissed, because time and again what happens is that for a very large period of time, they will occupy the mind space in the voter's mind and become a talking point which many would say is unnecessary.
Look, Nikunj, you can't stop frivolous petition in the Supreme Court. That the court has to actually now put its foot down. On this issue, it has been so well traveled now that I don't think there's scope for any other petition. But, just whenever the opposition wins an election, the BJP never questions the EVMs. Why don't they then do it? Look at the motives of someone like Prashant Bhushan. When the opposition wins Karnataka, or the left wins in Kerala, or any of the non-BJP governments, you never get then the EVMs are sacrosanct. That's how partisan this is. This is motivated not only from the point of view of undermining BJP victories, right? And simultaneously undermining India's electoral process and hence democracy and hence the sanctity of the verdict cast at polls, right? But it is also a cabal that operates under the aegis of the opposition. I am saying that very clearly, and I can prove it. Every time this group has done it, it has never championed causes where the opposition is covered in mud.
So you mean to say they are actually fronting for the opposition? But now that since
this is a front for the opposition.
So joining us now is O.P. Rawat, who's the former CEC, also Shaina NC BJP spokesperson. We are also joined by Ashpreet Khadial, who's the spokesperson of the Congress party. As we enter into this discussion, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is leading a roadshow in Bareilly. Bareilly is in Uttar Pradesh. It votes on 7th of May. And Bareilly is particularly important for the BJP as it has changed. It has replaced its candidate there with a former minister, Santosh Gangwar. Former minister who has won this seat 8 times, has been replaced by former minister Chhatrapal Gangwar, and this seat is a constituency that the party has consistently won since 1989. And this is the Prime Minister there holding a roadshow showing the importance of Bareilly for the BJP.
Suraj.
Moving on, let me start with Mr. Rawat. Mr. Rawat, the Supreme Court today has rejected the demand for 100% verification of voter-verified VVPATs in Indian elections. How do you see this? Do you see this as an end to this controversy that keeps coming up every now and then, specifically raised by the opposition, that EVMs can be manipulated?
It's a welcome decision and a reconfirmation that EVM and VVPAT system is foolproof, and there is no doubt about their efficacy. And the petitioners also have got some reprieve, like they have got 2 advantages, that even if you have doubts on microcontrollers having programmable memory, or there is some flash memory, and SLUs, symbol loading units, Supreme Court has given directions to the EC that if there is a complaint within 7 days, then microcontrollers could be examined, investigated, and if the complaint is found wrong, the expenditures will be booked to the complainant. And SLUs also will be kept in a sealed cover for 45 days. And if anything comes up, that symbol loading unit, something wrong happened, then that can also be rectified. So in a democracy, the opponents, the opposition, they are very important, essential to have the good health of democracy. And therefore, I would welcome Supreme Court's decision that they have done real justice in this case.
Right. Let me ask the Congress spokesperson here, Ashpreet ji, how do you see this judgment today? And the Prime Minister has, in fact, latched on to this, and he has accused your party and opposition of trying to mislead the people of the country. And the court has also observed how superior EVMs are with respect to, the ballot boxes, and how going back to ballot boxes would be in some ways a setback to electoral reforms. That's what the court has said. So in some ways, do you think that it would be self-defeating to to really harp on the problems or alleged problems with EVMs right now?
Mr. Modi attributed this to us. I do not understand how, because it wasn't the Congress party that was contesting the case. It was the Association of Democratic Reforms that was contesting the case. Number two, if you should attribute it to anyone, it should be your own leaders, Mr. Advani and Mr.
Both Rahul Gandhi and Congress leaders have talked about it. In fact, if you look at Jairam Ramesh's statement today.
Yeah, they have talked about it, but I'm talking in reference to the case. We weren't the petitioners. We had nothing to do with the case is what I'm trying to tell. But Mr. Modi had to suggest otherwise. So therefore, answering his question and his references, this should be attributed and this should be connected with Mr. Advani. Was Mr. Advani wrong in 2009 when he said that ballot papers should be brought and EVMs cannot be trusted? Should this not be connected with Mr. GVL Narasimha Rao, who rather wrote a book, and the name of the book was Democracy at Risk? Can we trust our EVMs? Is what he wrote. So they should be questioned about this first. Mr. Advani should be questioned about this first, and the Bharatiya Janata Party should tell, do they agree with the leaders or do they not agree with the
Shaina,
leaders?
would you like to answer that? And also let me add to this. In 2019, Chandrababu Naidu, the TDP Supremo, who is your alliance partner, in fact moved the Supreme Court asking for a minimum 50% randomized VVPAT slips to be counted. So clearly there have been doubts in the past. Some of them, came from your own people. So how do you see this then?
So I think this is a sign of desperation of the opposition. They have made their premise so clear that they're losing the elections so badly, and probably the Congress party will not even be left with the status of a regional party. Having said that, that is the reason why they're coming up with all these excuses of EVM tampering. Now, are you questioning the Election Commission of India, who have had hackathons where they have got all political parties and their leaders to be a part of the entire election process? You have the same Congress party that championed the cause of EVMs and in the past have now suddenly made it as if it's a desperate kind of possibility of so-called tampering. Why are they saying this? Because this is only insecurity. The top courts have rejected EVM tampering. The Supreme Court, I'm so glad, has dismissed these kind of people who've tried to manipulate and make it as if it's a case of being victims when there is nothing left of them in their political parties in terms of acceptability by the voter. They have no other way to challenge the victory of the Prime Minister and the popularity of the Prime Minister, and that's why they're playing these tactics. I want to say as a responsible citizen that you have unfounded,
the Supreme Court also today suggested that the Election Commission
only
explored the
part
possibility
of your narrative because you have no narrative left.
Yes, Shaina, I get that. Let me just take this question to Mr. Rawat. Mr. Rawat, taking off from what Shaina is also saying, Supreme Court has also suggested the Election Commission explore maybe the possibility of using a machine to count the VVPAT slips. Currently, the slips of 5 randomly selected EVMs in every assembly segment are verified. Is that something that the ECI should be looking at, and also help us understand the 2 additional safeguards that the Supreme Court talked about today?
In fact, if that would be possible, that would put a full stop to all kinds of doubt mongering. Because once a barcode is there and a VVPAT slip is counted by a machine, then there will be no hassle. And in fact, the confidence level will be more than 100% everywhere.
Right. And Ashpreet ji, this court has also observed that the suspicions regarding EVM tampering are unfounded, because reverting back to ballot boxes would be really bad for the country. And in fact, quoting from the order, it says that Indian elections are, almost 97 crore voters are there, and the number of candidates who contest elections is, of course, increasing every year. So do you think responsible position would be for your party to not question this, or do you think that your party will continue doing this?
2 things to that. Number 1, the order of the Supreme Court can be challenged via review petition and then a curative petition, and there are other alternates to it as well. Number 2, I want to suggest this to the Bharatiya Janata Party, that if this is what your stand is, then you should condemn to what Mr. Advani said. You should condemn to what Mr. GVL Narasimha Rao said. Do that at the soonest.
Oh,
Mr. Modi should
please stop going back and forth when the election commission has
last word
already
from Shaina. Would you like to respond to that?
Parties to come and see the process.
I'd have to interrupt you, Shaina.
Do you think Shaina, the ECI needs to do slightly more to dispel these doubts, or do you think all that has been done?
Thank you. So next is, I want to thank
Shaina, would you... Okay, let Shaina finish now.
Charges.
10 seconds, please.
The election commission has reached out.
So what I'm saying is
election
that I want to
commission
thank
please let her finish now. We got your chance. Let her finish now.
Party to see the process of elections.
I want to thank Mr. Modi
please let her finish.
Such a strong Supreme Court ruling on EVMs.
If I may.
I don't understand this kind of debate. Vasudha, you're asking me a question.
Please let her finish. I asked you the question, you answered. Let her finish now.
That are trying to discredit the entire process
okay, please stop talking.
in this country. Isn't this terrible?
Speak a word about it. I want to ask the Bharatiya Janata
Vasudha,
Party.
please.
Would you not let the BJP spokesperson speak at least? Let her speak. Shaina, please finish your sentence.
No. I'll tell you what. They're so in denial mode that they have no recourse left, no narrative left. And this is about questioning the entire electoral practice of the most vibrant democracy in the world today. I'm so glad the Supreme Court has slammed the petitioner, has slammed the entire so-called pseudo-secular lot.
Okay, thank you so much for joining me on this show. The Supreme Court today has said that we need a culture of trust and collaboration to strengthen the voice of our democracy. That's what the Supreme Court has said today, while it dismissed all pleas to go back to the ballot boxes. That's all we have for you in this show. Time for a short break. More news and updates on Cancer.